So welcome to MLOps Kubernetes Labs. And today we are going to learn about Google Cloud Kubernetes Cluster and how we can use Google Cloud Console and Google Cloud CLI to create Kubernetes cluster on our GCP. And after that, we're going to understand about some of the basic configuration that we can do while creating a cluster. For example, a cluster name, zone, region, and the node pool settings. Once we have created our cluster, we're gonna deploy a sample fast API application on the Google Kubernetes Engine using the Kubernetes manifest. And we're gonna look into some of the deployment configuration like replicas, labels, and services that Kubernetes API provide to us. After deploying our application, we're gonna think about scaling our application and we're gonna explore some of the options like horizontal scaling and the vertical scalings for the application that we are running on the GKE cluster. And how can we scale the number of replicas dynamically based on the CPU usage and the memory utilization, or with some of the custom metrics in case of our application. So first, let's start with uh, setting up the Google Cloud CLI on your local machine. So there are few ways you can install Google Cloud CLI on your machine. If you are a Mac user, you can simply use Homebrew to install Google Cloud CLI. And if you are using Windows or Linux, then here is like a documentation that you can refer to install the CLI on your local machine. So I'm currently using macOS, so I will be using Homebrew to install the CLI on my system. So I'll just open the terminal and I have this command do install --task Google -cloud -SDK. This will install the gcloud CLI on my local machine, and I can further basically create the Kubernetes cluster and node configuration from my local machine only. I don't have to like use the cloud console anymore to make changes to my cluster or even like change any configuration of my Kubernetes engine. So we're gonna wait for a few seconds. So now, as you can see, the Google Cloud SDK is installed on my system. And now we're gonna move ahead to initialize the Kubernetes cluster on our GCP project through Google Cloud Console. So make sure you have already created your project and configured the billing options on the project. And first of all, to use Kubernetes Engine, we have to enable the Kubernetes Engine API. So over here in the search bar, if you type Kubernetes, you will be redirected to the following page, to the API page of Google Cloud. And now you just have to click on enable to enable the Kubernetes Engine API on your project. So it's going to take some while and let's wait for it. So now, as you can see, the Kubernetes Engine API is enabled on my project. I have the following dashboard with all the configurations and everything. And here I can easily manage my cluster, workloads, application, secrets and config maps, storage, object browsers, and I can even back up my Kubernetes engine. So let's first start off creating the Kubernetes cluster using the Google Cloud Console. So if we go to cluster and if we click on create, so Google Cloud provides two ways to create the cluster. So one is like a autopilot cluster mode. So in this mode, all the configurations and node pool settings will be managed by the Google Clouds depending on the workload. But we are gonna do a standard cluster creation, not an autopilot one. So we're gonna click on switch to standard cluster, and we're gonna click on switch to standard cluster button. Now the whole page is changed to the cluster settings, and you can see the Google has estimated the pricing for the cluster, and it shows like 176 US dollars. But depending on your node pool settings and all the configuration, this pricing can vary as per your usage. So we're gonna simply name our cluster, for example, ML Ops Kubernetes, and we're gonna change uh, change it to zonal only, and we're gonna select US East because it is closer to our region. And then we're gonna keep all these settings as it is, and we're gonna click on. We don't have to do feed registration. This configuration is usually when we have to run together multiple clusters. And so we're gonna go straight away to node pool. So here we have a default pool where it has like three nodes assigned to this pool. So imagine nodes as like a server, like a instance or a machine. So three here represent like a three servers, three individual servers. So we're gonna change it to like one. It will significantly impact the cost of the whole cluster. So now you can see the cost has decreased to 107 US dollars. And we're gonna change few more settings. So for example, here is like a node pool upgrade option, and we can even specify the location of the pool if you want in a specific region, for example, in US East, West, or Central. And now we're gonna check for nodes. So the instance we got here is like E2 instance, which is like a low cost instance with highly computing. Like we have like 0.25 to 32 virtual CPUs available here. And if we go further, we can see like we are getting a two virtual CPU, one core, and 4 GB of memory in this particular instance. So we're gonna change it to a bit lower configuration. So we're gonna switch to E2 small one because our workload is just a fast API application, not bigger than that. And we're gonna change the disk size to like 50 gigs. And as you can see, the cost has significantly dropped to $90 from 170. I'll recommend at least use E2 small. Don't use micro because we have lot more workloads that we're gonna run on our EKS cluster. So it should be sufficient to run all the workloads in a cluster. Once we are done with the configuration and we change the node pools setting, we can keep all the rest of the things as default and we can just click on create. And this is going to take a while to create our cluster. It can take up to like 5 minutes to create the cluster and when it get ready for the first time. So let's wait for the deployment. So let's refresh this page. So you can see the status, the cluster is being created. Let's click on the cluster. So our cluster is almost like 67% done and it's just waiting for the health checks. In the meantime, we can explore some of the configuration that we have here. So let's go to nodes and you can see we have a node pool created, the default pool where we ask for one node with the machine type of E2 small. And these are like the internal IP, pod IP for the machine that is assigned by the Kubernetes cluster. Then we have like storage if we want to attach some persistent volume to our cluster, but we are not gonna do that in this video. So Let's wait for the cluster creation to finish. So our cluster was created successfully, and now it's ready for the operation. If we go to our nodes and go to our node pool, we can see the status of our node pool is okay here. And our node that is created by the node pool is ready for the workloads. And we can further see the configuration of the node, for example, the requested CPU allocation, memory allocation request, memory allocated, and everything. Now we will try to connect our Kubernetes cluster using our local terminal or the Google Cloud CLI that we installed earlier. First of all, we have to initialize the Google Cloud uh, project onto our terminal. So we will start with initializing the Google Cloud CLI. So we're going to type gcloud init. So this has given us like the few option, basically the configuration of the Google Cloud that we have to choose. So I'm already signed in on the Google Cloud CLI with my email address. So it's like I can like reinitiate the configuration or I can create a new configuration. So I'm gonna start with creating a new configuration. So I have to type a configuration name. I'll type MLOps. I'll just log into my current account. Now I have all the projects that I have linked to my account. So I'm gonna choose the MLOps Labs, the project 6. And we'll say yes. So we'll keep it to US East 1B. That is number one. So we're gonna select one. So now our Google Cloud Console is initialized and linked with our project, ML Labs, and the project number. Now we can easily communicate to our Kubernetes cluster using our CLI. So over here on the Google Cloud Console, we have to click on connect. Here's a command. Oh yeah, so before basically start operating on the Google on the Kubernetes cluster from our local terminal, we need one more tool that is kubectl. And there are various way we can again install the kubectl onto our machine. We can either basically kubectl is like a command line tool to communicate with the Kubernetes cluster, and it's like a act as a control panel for the Kubernetes cluster. And Google Cloud CLI just to basically initialize the Kubernetes configuration on a local machine. So to install kubectl, let me see the installation guide. I'll post the link to the installation guide in the README. So if you are using same like Mac OS, you can simply use Homebrew to install the kubectl. So I have already installed on my local machine. So if you already have it installed, you can simply go ahead over here on your clusters. And if you want like how to open this page, so if you go back to Google Cloud, search for Kubernetes in the search bar, click on Kubernetes Engine, and you'll get this Kubernetes cluster page. Now click on your cluster that you have just created, and over here you'll find a button to connect. This will give you a command line access command to basically run on your local terminal. So I'm going to copy this command and paste it here and press enter. So it gave me the kube config entry generated for this MLOps Kubernetes cluster. So now Kubernetes cluster configuration has been initialized on my local machine. So now I can simply use some of the commands, for example, kubectl get hype ns. So there are some specific terms that you have to learn about Kubernetes. For example, I'll, NS is like a namespace. Then we have deployments, and then we have services and ingress. I'm going to give you the list of all the commands, like a cheat sheet that you can refer to. So you can see if we type kubectl get ns, we are getting all the available namespace in our cluster.
So in this video, we have seen how we can deploy Kubernetes Engine on Google Cloud and how we can initialize the cluster and how can we use our local terminal to connect with the cluster on Google Cloud platform. And we have gone through several cluster configuration that we have available by Kubernetes API. So yeah, that's it for this video.